Hi, I'm Courtney Sale, the Nancy L. Donahue Artistic Director at MRT, and I am really grateful and I'm so excited to be sitting with my friend and colleague, Naomi Iizuka, um, who is a prolific playwright who, shocking to me because I've been reading you for like 20 years, and your work has had major impact on me. I I felt very fortunate to have encountered it when I was in my young um, arts emerging days in Seattle. And thank you so much for joining us and chatting with us.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure.
Um, Naomi, I would love for you to talk about your writing process, because I think a lot of people carry this mythology that a playwright just squirrels away and ooh, like poof, out comes a play. And so I'd love for you to just talk about the rhythm of how you make a play.
So, for me, I think my writing process is about engaging with the world in some way. So, I think that that looks different depending on what play I'm working on. So, sometimes that looks like story circles where I get together and I do interviews with a community. And sometimes that looks like one-on-one interviews where I go into somebody's kitchen and talk with them for a little while, or I go to a fish fry and talk with different people in a kind of casual setting for a little while. And then sometimes that it's a more traditional process, but a lot of the work I've been doing in recent years has been work that is begun in conversation. I find that very exciting.
Um, Naomi, can you, I've asked this question of other writers and I really like, it's taken us into a lot of different places. When you sit down to write a play, do you know what you're capable of?
Ha, that's such a good question. No, and when I sit down to write a play, and I don't know what other writers experience. I often feel a sense of uncertainty and anxiety, coupled with also a sense of curiosity. And I actually think that that sort of beginner mind is a really good mind to have in everything, probably, but certainly in the writing process, in that, it should be challenging. It should be, you should approach it with a certain degree of humility and uncertainty because the world is complex, and if you're not, I think, approaching with humility and a certain level of thoughtfulness, I think you may miss something.
Um, you've developed work all over the country and in all sorts of theaters of many sizes and academic institutions. Can you talk about the sort of the best environment and the best container in which new work can develop and grow? You know, if you could pull the best qualities from all those places, what is that ideal space?
I think the ideal space is an adaptive space because I think every writer is different and every project is different. So this is a tricky question because institutions by nature tend to be institutional. They tend to have systems, and I actually think the best places to write are those places that are filled with people who are good listeners and are willing and have a sort of a kind of structure that is sufficiently nimble and agile that it can adapt to different voices and different people in the room. I think that's the big challenge, not only for theaters but also universities and training programs as well.
Let's talk about new work audiences for a second. And you know, this question is getting at to your desires about what a new work audience, what you'd want that experience to feel like. So the way I've been phrasing it is, if you had to write recruitment language for that audience, who are they?
Oh, that's such a great question. I've had a number of mentors over the years when I was younger that said, don't think about the audience. You just have to create what you're going to create. And I've realized over time that I think a lot about the audience. Not necessarily is somebody going to laugh or not in that way, but I do think about who are you writing for, and so I think that that starts with actually the germ of the idea. Like, what are the questions you want to ask? What are the conversations you want to have? And then I think that an institution needs to do everything in its power and marshal the resources that it has to be a really good host, you know, to invite people into the space, and not just to invite them, but to follow up and to serve something really delicious, and then to make a plan for the next time. You know, I mean, I think that that analogy of being a good host is, and it's not mine. I think Jack Ruler was the one who pioneered that idea. Is so important. You know, how do you invite people in? How do you use your emotional intelligence and everything you know about being a good person in the universe? How do you be a good host?
Um, and when we started the series talking with writers, we were kind of framing this question about the moment of not being able to gather, and we find ourselves in a different moment where we are so compelled to gather because the lives of Black folks are on the line, and I think theaters are really taking a deep reflection about what they've done, what they're going to do, and most importantly, acting upon that. And I wonder for you, if you could just talk a little bit about what is your charge in this moment as a writer?
That's a great question. And I don't think there's a monolithic answer. I think first and foremost, listen. And then once listening, think about concrete actions. So I think that those two things, those two actions of listening and taking action go in tandem, you know, the listening part is really important. I've been in a number of conversations where, you know, it's been asked very politely that people listen, you know, that that's really what we're there to be doing. And I think that cannot be underestimated, you know, the importance of listening and really listening, you know, taking in. And then I think, and this is something that I've talked to with a lot of people, it's really, really important that you take action every day, you know, in a very concrete way, and that you're continuing to do that a year from now, 2 years from now, and that you're continuing to be creative about what those actions are. You know, we are creators, and if we are to really, I think, answer that charge that you know you name, I think we need to apply our creativity to those actions. You know, what are those actions going to be? Not just to make great art, but to make our communities better for everyone.
Awesome. I love that, Naomi. It's um, the reminder that conversation is part of that labor, is part of that work. Um, it's so great to get to talk to you. Thank you so much for doing this. And I cannot wait to have your work and you at MRT. Just thank you again for the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.